Okay, now we are live on YouTube. It seems I'm live on YouTube. Okay, just a second. Let me just verify once. Okay, we are live on YouTube. Okay, great. So, great. So today the agenda is we are going to talk about Java. We are going to write our first code in Java, and that's exciting, right? People who are new to the world of Java, they will see Java as one of the most. Okay, how many of you think Java is difficult to learn? Or will you refer to people, I mean, people who have seen Java syntax? Example, let's say if someone comes to you by asking, hey, let's say there's a kid who is just 8 years old, and there's a trend going on in the industry now that even kids need to learn programming. Weird thing. Yeah, in fact, I have a daughter who is 3 years old. I have a plan of teaching her Java after 2 years or maybe 1 year. But it's not a compulsory for her to learn that language. It's not compulsory for her to learn the computer systems, right? I will try to teach, but it's her decision to learn it or not. But if you see the trend on different platforms, they are like, hey, we should teach programming to the kids and make them developers. Please don't force your kids to do that. Okay. Okay, just to check with everyone, is my audio is proper before I start?
It's clear, sir. It's clear.
Okay, thank you so much, Nitin. Great. So basically, so let's say if someone comes to you, and I'm asking this question to people who have actually seen the syntax of multiple languages. So let's say if someone comes to you by saying, hey, I'm in school now, and I'm interested in learning programming language. That's a good thing, right? They're interested to learn something. Now, which language you will suggest? Again, this question is only for those people who have seen syntax of other languages. Okay, most of you, I can see in the chat, no one says Java. People are saying Python, C, JavaScript. Okay, I got 2 answers for Java. I got C, C++, Python, VB, and now I can see Java. Okay. What's the reason why people are not suggesting Java? Okay, let me show you why they are doing that. So what happens, let me open my Sublime to type a Java code. Of course, I will not explain this code as of now, and I don't even want you people to get scared looking at the language, but just be with me. I will try to make it as easy as possible. And, we have this amazing trainer who will make this as easy as possible. Okay, it says I don't have permission to share. Okay, recently I've changed my system, and in the new system, I don't have any permissions to do anything. I hope you can see my screen, everyone. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, I have your questions on the right-hand side. I mean, I can see the chat window there on the right-hand side. Okay, basically, if you want to teach a language, okay, so what you do, basically, you write the first code, right? And which is the first language which we all learn? Right, C, Python, right? Okay, so let's say if you do it in Java, and which is the first code you write? So in any language, which is the first code you write? Hello world, right? You don't start anything without hello world. You know what hello world I treat it as? I treat hello world to be the inauguration. When you open a shop, the first day you do inauguration the same way. In Java, we do, in any programming language, we do hello world. Now, if you want to print hello world in Python, okay, let me just start with Python. What you do in Python is you say print, okay, people who are new to programming, just ignore what I'm saying. I'm just talking about some syntax, okay? So in Python, if you want to print something, you say print and you say hello world. And if you show this syntax to some people, they will say, okay, that's how you do programming. That makes sense. Just print hello world, it's work. This is how you do it in Python, okay? Let me show you the syntax for Java. So this was Python. Let me just delete this now. In Java, you can't simply say print hello world. Basically, you have to create a class, and I'm just doing it fast because I don't want you to remember this syntax as of now. Okay, let me just do it quickly. Okay, I'm just focusing on typing now. This is how you write hello world in Java. Do you really think you will suggest a language like this to a fresher or to a school-going kid? Of course not, right? You don't want them to hate programming itself. And that's why Java is mostly learned by people who are dedicated, people who just want to learn a language or just want to explore. They don't start with Java. You need commitment to be a Java developer. Right? If you don't have a commitment, don't even touch Java. But then things have changed. As I mentioned, if you remember, in the last session, I've talked about different Java versions. We have Java 8, Java 9, Java 10. Now, the next year, we are going to get Java 20. In every new version, they are making sure that Java will be Java. Anyone can learn Java. Okay. So what if I say you don't have to type entire thing to learn a language? Okay. Let's make Java easy. Let's see how do we do that. Now, even before we go there, I have a question for everyone. Okay. Let me know in the chat. And the question is, why in this world, okay, sorry for that echo. Yeah, so why in this world we are doing programming? What do you think? Why do we do programming? What do you mean by software in general? Okay, Swapnil says to solve problems. Okay, makes sense, right? So basically, we build application to solve problems. If you talk about any application in the world now, what they're doing, if you can break it down, the purpose, the main purpose, just example, let's say, I don't know why I'm saying JShell. I got into Hindi because yesterday we were taking Python session, which happens in Hindi. But let's say, if you think about any application in the world now, what they are doing. So let's go back to medical industry. If we talk about doctors, pharmacists, any staff in the hospital, what is their job? What is their role? What they are doing for the world? They are saving lives. They are making sure that you are healthy. So it's not just about life. It's also about, they just want you to be healthy so that you can focus on your life, so that you can focus on your work. And they just want to make sure that everyone in this world is healthy. If you can simplify that thing in the world of software, what we are doing. Okay, basically we are doing a job which Nokia was doing from a long time. It's connecting people. Oh, okay. So I have this habit of doing PJs. Okay, so PJs is in Hindi, pakao means, okay, what do you say in English, pakao? Nonsense? No. Boring? Yeah, boring. Yeah. So boring jokes, I have a lot of boring jokes in my, yeah, poor jokes. You can say poor jokes, that PJs. Yeah. So I do a lot of PJs in the batch. So ignore my PJs. And sometimes I try to be sarcastic. I don't know if you can see that on my face, but yeah. So the thing is, if we talk about IT industry, what we're doing, we are basically trying to connect people. We are basically trying to share the information. It's all about information. I mean, think about any application. You give me an application, I will say why data is there. So name an application, which we are using. I mean, think about Zoom. Zoom is a product, right? IT product. What we're doing, it's all about information sharing. Come on, give me an application. Yeah, PhonePe. So PhonePe or any payment application just transfer the money from the sender's account to the receiver account. But do you really think money get transferred? We don't transfer money. We just change the data. The balance deduct from your account and it get updated on someone else's account. Think about any streaming service like Netflix or Hotstar. It's also about sharing data. Now that data can be in terms of videos, right? Think about Uber. Now, what do you think? Before Uber, do you really think we used to, I mean, see, before Uber, after Uber, what has changed? The cars are still same. It's not like Uber have introduced an electric car suddenly. Of course, the cars are same. The drivers are same. It's not like robots are driving cars now. The cars are same. The drivers are same. The customers are same. What is changed is the way you communicate. You know, I remember that day when I was a kid, I had this habit. So let's say if my family wants to go out, okay, of course, we were not having any vehicle to just take and go. We used to book, we used to stop a taxi or a auto rickshaw, right? So it was my job to go on the street and say, hey, taxi, stop, we want to go somewhere. One day I just ran towards the road to stop a car or to stop a cab, and I missed the road and I met with the accident. Okay. Okay. I don't know. I have met with a lot of accidents. Something wrong with my way of walking on the street. I have to change it. The thing is, instead of going on a street to stop the car, we can just take out a phone now and book a cab. The cab is same, the drivers are same, the customers is same, the way of communication has changed. So can we say we do programming just to work with information? And maybe that's why it says information technology. It's all about information. And that's why every time you learn a technology, it can be a language, it can be like technology like blockchain, it can be technology like data science. It's all about data. We're just trying to write applications so that we can work with data. Is it making sense? So irrespective of which language you choose, ultimately, you'll be working with data. Okay. So now can we also say that whenever you do programming, we try to store information, we try to retrieve the information, we try to process the information. You know, your logic in programming gets complex when you do data processing. Saving, retrieving is very easy. Processing your data will take time. Okay, just a second. Okay, great. So basically, it's all about data, right? So I've cleared that one point. It's all about data. Now, see, whenever you do any programming language, we need to work with data, right? Printing, processing, saving, and fetching. Okay. So what I will do now is we'll start our first code here. Now, where we are going to write a code. Now, remember when we started with Java fundamentals, Heather was talking about some layers where we can type a code. Then there's also a concept of compilers and interpreters. Basically, you compile your code. Basically, you interpret your code. Now here, if you want to do the same thing, how will you compile your code? So come on, in the chat window, you can explain that, why we write, okay, so why we use compiler, or which compiler we use in Java. Okay, so basically we have to use Java C, right? And we have to write entire code just to compile that. So what I will do now is, in Java 9, let me share the entire screen so that you can see what I'm doing. Is there any file open? Okay. I hope you can see my screen. I'm just keeping everything on the other side. Okay. So basically, instead of using this IDE, so basically I'm using VS Code here, but I will not be using VS Code because you have to type so much of lines of code, right? Now what I will do is, in Java 9, we got this amazing feature where you can just get the output using one line, and that's gold. You know, when you learn Python for the first time, you basically write only one line of code, right? So in Java 9, we got something called JShell. So let me open my terminal, which was doing pinging. Let me clear the screen and let me increase the font size a bit. So what I will do is, first of all, I will check, do I have Java in my machine? So I can say Java C version, and you can see I have installed Java 19. I would not suggest you to install Java 19. Java 17 is good for you because you're learning for the first time. Java 19, I'm trying it out because I want to see if there are some bugs, and whatever project I'm working on, is it working with Java 19? You don't do that. So you install Java 17 on your machine. So Java 11 or Java 17 should work, but I'm using Java 19 because I'm testing. Now with this, in Java 9, I'm talking about Java 9, they have introduced something called JShell. Now, if I enter JShell, you can see it will give you a shell prompt. Now in this shell prompt, I can type the Java code. But let's not directly jump into Java code. What I will do here is, let's say I want to add two numbers. That's what we do, right? You know, when I was in my college, I got this one question from the professor, and it took me some time to answer that. And the question for you, for everyone, is, What's the difference between a calculator and a computer? How will you differentiate it? Try to keep it simple. Okay. So basically, calculator will be having a CPU. Makes sense. A calculator is a subset of a computer. A computer is a programmable device. Makes sense. Okay. Can we just simplify this like this? A calculator can calculate and a computer can compute. I know, again, a poor joke, right? But yeah, there's a fact in this. A calculator can calculate, which can only do mathematical operations. A computer can think. When you say compute, it means a computer can take decisions, right? So how do we decide something? We'll see that in some time. But if you say a calculator subset of computer, can we do calculations using computer? We can, right? We normally use calculator here. And we'll do the same thing here. So let's say I want to add two numbers. Can we do that? So I can say 2 plus 3. Oh, you can see we got 5. So basically, we have 2 plus 3 here. We got the output 5. Can we do something more? Can I say 9 multiply by 4? Oh, what do I end this? It's not given ending with semicolon. Oh, it doesn't even clear. Anyway, so let me just focus on this thing. So basically, let's say if I say 9 into 8, even that works, you can see we got the answer. So basically, we are doing a multiplication here, right? We are multiplying two numbers. Before that, I just want to address one thing. A lot of people are saying we are going slow. We are focusing more on the basics. See, the speed will increase gradually. When you drive a car, do you directly get into the 100 kilometers per hour? Of course, you don't do that, right? You gradually increase your pace. We are at the start of our Java course. We will start with slow. Trust me, there will be a point where you will say, that's it, cool down. Okay, so at that point, again, we have to go slow. Okay, just trust the process. We will increase our speed. Yeah, so 9 into 8, we got 72. And we can do those stuff as well. Now, the question is, if you say we have 9 and we have done this calculation, right? We got 72. But if you can observe, we have one more thing. We have this $2. What this $2 is? So what is happening is every time you do an operation, these are values. So 2 and 3, they are values. When you are performing an operation on some values, and of course, the output is also a value, this value is getting stored somewhere. And that is your storage here. So this $1 is actually a storage. And this storage in programming is called, yeah. So this particular storage is called variables. So what is variable? Variable is a storage where you can store data. So this 5 is getting stored in this particular variable, which is named as $1 because we don't have a name for it. As of now, remember that's a storage. We can also call it as a variable. Again, why it is called variable, we'll talk about that later, but this is called a variable. Now tell me how many operations have performed apart from this mistake here. So we got this first operation here and we got a second operation. So in total, we got 2 operations, right? Cool. We can do some more operation as well. Let's say I want to print hello world. Now, how do you print hello world in Java? Now, if you say hello world, we can do this, but then programming, if you want to follow Java programming language, what you do is we use a different syntax. Basically in Java, see, you use a programming language to interact with your CPU, right? So we have to give a statement. Now, how do we write this statement? It's very simple. So we have to say print. Now, print is a statement. So of course, it's a call of methods and functions. We'll talk about that later. As of now, remember that we are doing a statement here. So I'm saying print. And in this bracket, it will say, okay, you want to print something? Do that, please. But also tell me what you want to print. And you will print that in this, you will do that in this round brackets. So in this round brackets, in double quotes. Now, why we have to use a double quote here? Okay, instead of printing hello world, I will just print a number here. So let me print number 6. Let's not talk about double quotes. Let's say I want to print 6. Let's talk about double quotes later. Let's say I want to print value 6. Java says, okay, this looks good, but then I have a different syntax to follow. So whatever you're writing here, it actually comes under syntax. So if you want to print this, you have to follow a syntax. So in Java, if you want to print something, you will say system.out.print. Now, what this system and out means, you will understand that later. At this point, this is a statement you have to use to print something. So it doesn't matter you are at what level. If you want to print something, just say system.out.print. In bracket, you have to mention the value which you want to print. So I'm printing 6. I will say enter, and you can see we got the value, which is 6. Cool stuff, right? Okay, so now tell me, in the entire code, what we have done, how many variables you have? Of course, we have already done that, right? We have 2 variables. Oh, cool. And then we have executed 3 statements. So we have done with the first one here. We got second one, and we got third one. Cool. What if you want to add the values, which are this? You want to add 5 and you want to add 72. Of course, we can simply do that, right? We can say 5 plus 72. This will work. Yes. And if I say enter, you can see we got 77. That makes sense. But don't you think we already have this value somewhere? These values are stored in the storage, right? Which is $1 and $2. So instead of typing 5 and 72, we can simply say $1 plus $2. Now, what we are doing here, we are basically using the storage. We are basically using variables. And that's what we want to do. It's all about data. You store your data in the variable and you perform the operations on the variables. Point to remember. And if I say enter, you can see we got 77. Now this output is getting stored in another variable called $5. What if you want to see all the variables? In JShell, basically, it gives you some commands to follow. Example, if I say /enter, it will say with / you can use all these commands. You can list all the commands. You can edit a particular command. You can save the command in a file. What if you want to use that command once again? You can open a particular file to see all the commands. You can see all the variables we got here. Okay, some of you are saying which is $3. This statement, this is $3. If I'm not wrong, yeah. And then we got help, we got history, we got reset. So if you want to remove all the variables, you can say reset. Let me show you all the variables here. If I say was, you got all these variables here. So the 3 went into the statement. 3 went into statement. Every statement will get an ID. Okay, cool. And you can see we got this output here. We got 4 variables. We can also store all this data in a file with commands, all the commands. So what you can do is you can say save, and you can you can save that in a file. I can say code java.txt. Now I'm storing all the commands in a file, and now I can do a reset. Now, when I do a reset, it will reset the entire state. So basically, it maintains the state as well. And now, if I see all the variables, we don't have any variables. Cool. See, it is such a simple language, right? You can just write the statements and it will work. What if you want to open all the files? You can open this code java.txt, and okay, we got 6 statements. Do we have 6 statements? Let's verify. I can use list to list all the statements. Okay. Why it says 6? We have 5. Okay, anyway. So basically, you can see we have 5 statements here, which got printed here, and we can use one of the statement if you want. But okay, anything else we can do here? You can print all the methods you have in your code. You can print all the classes. Do we have classes here? Okay, that comes under types. So we have all these options, right? Awesome. So This is how you can use JShell. But what if you want to print hello world? We have not talked about it, right? So you'd help me here. How do we print hello world? So I can say system.out.print, and in brackets, we can print hello world. So I can simply say hello world and enter. Ooh, we got an error. What's the error? So the thing is, see, whenever you write a statement, example, let's say we are saying system.out.print, how Java knows what your intention is. Remember, we talked about high-level language, we talked about low-level languages. So how Java understands what we are talking about, why, when we say system.out.println, and how Java knows what to do. So basically, Java has something called inbuilt libraries, inbuilt classes, or inbuilt understanding. So when you say system.out.println or print, Java sees, okay, system is this, out is this, print is this. Now, as a programmer is trying to tell me print something. So Java will try to convert everything, but then you don't want to convert these things. So you want to say, hey, Java, whatever I'm writing inside this bracket, just print it as it is. Those are normal text. Don't try to understand that. So if you want Java to take care of those things as it is, don't try to convert that. Put that in double quotes. It is applicable for other languages as well. Example, let's say in India, we have so many languages. In different countries, we have different languages. And when you learn a new language, example, if I say my name is Navin Reddy, and if I try to convert that into some other languages, let's say if you want to do that in Marathi, I don't know how many of you understand Marathi here, but I can say Maza now Navin ahe. Now, in this case, I will try to convert each word into that particular language. So my name, I will convert that into a specific language. And then, but I will not try to convert my name itself. My name stays constant. Just because you're changing to different language, you will not change your name, right? In the same way, you want Java to treat hello world as it is. So put that in double quotes. Now, specifically, use the double quotes. In Java, we don't support single quotes here. Now, if you're coming from Python or JavaScript, it is allowed, but in Java, it is double quotes only. And now if you say enter, you can see we got hello world. Is it making sense, everyone? Cool. Cool. That's how you can print the statements. That's how you can execute something. But there's a point now. If you can do that, everything in JShell, you might have heard, right? We have different IDEs, we have different softwares where you can write code. Basically, we can use VS Code, we can use Eclipse, we can use IntelliJ IDEA. We have all those things. Then why we are using JShell? And then why not we are using JShell everywhere? See, the purpose of JShell was different. When JShell was introduced in Java 9, the intention was for the people to learn Java easily. And also, if you have a small code to test, then why to open your IDE, why to type the entire code and then test it? Whatever code you want to test, just type it here and get it tested. So there were different reasons why JShell was used. But JShell is not for making applications. Don't write your applications in JShell, not preferred. So I have shown you JShell so that you can learn a language. As I mentioned before, we can print statements. We can also create variables. You can see we have our variables here. But you will get more idea about variables once we start talking about the variables concept. Is it making sense, everyone? So of course, if you want to build an application, if you want to write a bigger code, we have to prefer some sort of IDE. Now let me talk about IDE here. So I'm opening my Sublime again, and I hope you can see my Sublime. So basically, there's a concept of editors, and there's a concept of IDE. So what are editors? Now, editors are basically a place where you can type your code. So when you type your code, But then it's not just about typing, right? It's also about typing the code. It's also about compiling your code. It's also about running your code, right? So here in this IDE, I can type my code, I can compile my code, and I can run my code. I can debug my code, right? What else we can do? We can also test our code. So we can do all those things in a software, in something called IDE, where IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. Okay. Now, where exactly we are going to use, so what IDEs we are going to use? So basically, there are different IDEs we can use. We can use Eclipse or IntelliJ, as Heather or Nitin already mentioned. We can use IntelliJ IDEA as well. Which one you prefer? Okay. But then we can also use something called one of the most famous IDE, or not the IDE, we can say IDE, yeah. So one of the most famous IDE, which is VS Code. Now, should we prefer VS Code or should we prefer Eclipse? That depends. Okay, so we will not suggest you to use any IDE. You can use whatever you want. You can use VS Code, you can use Eclipse, you can use IDEA. That's your choice. To start with, in today's session, I'm going to use VS Code. But once we start with some complex code, maybe tomorrow, we can directly jump into Eclipse. Okay, now in companies, which one they use? Most of the companies are using Eclipse, but then there are some companies who are ready to pay for IntelliJ IDEA. So they pay to use an IDE, which is IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate version. Okay, so initially we'll start with VS Code and then we'll jump towards Eclipse. Cool. So let me write the same code in VS Code now. So how do we use VS Code? It's very simple. You type VS Code, or it's already installed on my system. It's already open, I guess. So you can say this is how your VS Code looks like, people who are coming to VS Code for the first time. Now, in this VS Code, you can create your file. First of all, I will open a folder. I don't have a folder created now. I will just do that on desktop. Okay, not desktop. What I will do is I will click on open folder. And in this, I will create a new folder. Yeah, let me just do that in Naveen itself. What's wrong? Why I am clicking on the wrong button here? So Naveen, new folder, I will say Java codes, or I will simply say Java, create and open. So you can say this is your VS Code folder. I will click on new file. And I will name this file as first code.java, enter, and create file. Okay, it's asking me to install some extensions for Java. I will do that. So that something it will give you some auto completion suggestions and okay. So you can see we also have IntelliCode, which is AI assisted development. But I would suggest don't do that to start with. So extension pack should be enough. Okay, let's write our first code here. Now, basically, whenever you type a code in Java, Java is actually called a verbose code. Okay, now what is verbose means? There are some languages where if you want to do something, just write the statement and you're done. But in Java, Java says, you have to first explain what is your structure is, and then you can type a code. So in Java, you have to do everything. You have to mention everything step by step. Otherwise it will not work. So how do you mention everything step by step? So what you do is, again, I'm not here to blame Java, but just be with me. 5 minutes, just concentrate what I'm doing. See, Java says if you want to type a code, if you want to print something, just say system.out.print. This is how you ask Java to print. This is a statement. And as I mentioned, what is system, what is out, what is print called? We'll talk about that later. As of now, let's follow the syntax. Java says system.out.print is what you use. And in this bracket you mention, that you want to print hello world. Let's do that. And okay, let's save this. Let me just delete this part. Okay, so just save this. Now, how do we run this code? It's very simple. You can just go to your terminal, click on new terminal. And first of all, let's check, do we have Java support here? I can say Java C version. Enter, you can say Java C, that means Java is there. I will clear this screen. And here, I will just try to run this file. Now, the question for everyone, people who think they know Java, is how do we run this file? Sorry. Okay, most of you are saying Java C and file name. Some of you are saying Java and file name. Java first code.java. How many of you think this will work? Okay, few of you say it will not work. Java C is compulsory, right? Okay. First of all, let's run this code, and of course, it will give you error. But the error is not with the compilation. Error is with the syntax. You can say it is saying you something. It says system.out.print is there, but it was expecting something else. You can see it says this thing was expected. There's no class, there's no interface, there's no enum, there's no record. Okay, step one. First of all, every statement in Java needs a semicolon. That's how you end your statements. The way you put full stop in the statements in normal English, you put a semicolon. Okay, next step. The next step is, see, Java says, I need a starting point. Whenever you write a Java code, you have to define the starting point. See, when you make an application in one big application, you will not just have one file. You might have 5 files, 10 files, 100 files, 200 files. There's no limit. Okay. So in one project, you can have multiple Java files, but the starting point will be only one. How do we define the starting point? In most of the languages, C, C++, like Java as well, the starting point is main. This is how you start your code. So main is a starting point of execution. Okay, so I will open main. Now, just for the syntax, why we are doing the syntax, we'll talk about that later. But just go with the syntax. Now, main says, main has a very specific syntax to follow. The syntax is public static void main. And in this main, you specify string arguments. We'll say A only. This is a syntax which you have to mention. Otherwise, this will not work. Let me repeat. You have to follow this particular syntax. Now, if you define our method here, I guess it has not picked the extension here. Is it picked? Okay. Maybe I should restart. But anyway, we'll do that restart later. But you can see that this is a syntax which you have to follow. And now with this syntax, let me run the file once again. And you can see we got the error. The error is, it says class, interface, enum, record, expected. You know what is missing? Everything in Java should be a part of a class. Now, this is because of a concept of OOPS in Java. Again, what is OOPS, which is object-oriented programming? We'll talk about that later. But Java says everything should be part of a class. You know, one difference between Java and Python, they both are at the same level in terms of easy or difficult. Java is difficult initially. Later on, it is very easy. Python is very easy at the start, but once you go with the project, it's very complex. So don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a language by its first code. Okay. So now what I will do is I will just open this. So put everything inside a class. And I just want to disable this thing here. Okay, I should have done this settings before. This is what happens when you change your machines. All the setup has gone. Anyway, this is actually given by my IDE here. More actions. No, it's not going. Anyway, so let's run this file now. And you can also follow some indentation. So every time you open the curly brackets, just put a tab and then type your code. Okay, which Java should I install in our Mac? Java 17 should be good. Okay, now we have written the code, right? Now tell me if I say Java first code.java, enter, you can say it worked. We got the output. Yay, I know. The first code has been executed. And I'm just waiting for the question where you'll talk about, hey, if we can do that with Java, why we are using Java C, right? Okay, let me explain then. For that, let me just go back to my drawing board. It's here. See, basically what happens, when you type the Java code, that's your .java. So whenever you write a code that goes inside .java, then you do one step. See, ultimately you have to run this code on your CPU, right? This is your CPU. I'm not good with drawings, but this is your CPU. Doesn't matter which company, right? This is your CPU. You want to make sure that you run this file run on the CPU. But unfortunately, your CPU will not understand what this Java file is because Java is an English language here. So you have to basically follow some steps. Every time you type a Java code, you have to convert that into some other file. Remember, Heather has talked about different stages of Java. Java is a platform independent language. You know why? It's because when you type a Java code, the first thing you do is you compile your code. Now, after compiling your code, you will get .class files. So this Java code, you can say here, the Java code is your source file. And this class file is your bytecode. Okay. And then you run this code, which gets converted into machine level language, or what do you call, let's say, machine language, which is binary format, which goes into CPU. Okay. So basically, directly, you do not just run your Java file on the CPU. What you do is you do multiple steps. The first thing you do is you compile your code, and then you run your code, which gets converted into machine language. So ultimately, we have two steps here. We have a step which will compile the code, and then we have a step which will interpret the code. Everyone there with me? So in Java, it's not like you can directly, oh, you can't see my screen, everyone? I'm just writing on my board. Can you say it? Okay, great. So basically, we have to do two steps. First, compile, and then interpret. In Java as well, we have to do that with two steps. First, you have to compile, then you have to interpret. Now, the way you compile that is with the help of a command. Which command do we use to compile the code? So we use a command which is called Java C. Now, Java C stands for Java compiler. So using Java C, you compile your code. And then using Java command, you run your code. Everyone there with me? So first, you have to compile the code with the help of Java C, and then you can run the code with the help of Java command. So when you compile the code, we have to follow this step. How do you compile the code? So you have to say Java C, and you have to mention your file name, which in this case, you can say Java C, and the file name is what? File name was firstcode.java. Now, once you compile your code, the next step is you have to run the code. To run the code, you have to say Java, and then you have to mention your class name. What is your class name? What is your class name? I forgot the class name. Oh, it's the same thing. The class name is also Java C. So the class name is first code. So let me repeat. When you compile the code, you do this statement. When you run this code, you do this statement. So basically, you have to write two statements to run the code. First, you have to compile the code, and then you run the code. When you compile the code, internally, it will create a file for you. So behind the scene, it will create a new file. You know what that file name is? It will be first code.class. All good? So basically what I'm saying is every time you write a code, you have to do two things. First, you have to say Java C, first code.java. It will compile the code. See, the moment you compile the code, it will create one more file. Can you see that? We have a file here, first code.class, right? And then you run the code. You say Java, first code, and you got the output. Okay, let me open this class file, and it says even if you open the file, you will not read. You cannot read. But we are humans, right? We don't have patience. Let's open this anyway. This is what it shows you. This is your class file, the bytecode. This is not for you. This is for the interpreter, the JVM. Now, again, what is JVM? What is the interpreter? We'll talk about that later. As of now, this is your code. All good? Okay, now my question is, what if you are a developer and then you got a client? Client says, hey, developer, I want to print hello world. You will say, okay, this is how you can print hello world. If you want to run this code on your machine, now if you want to run this code on your machine, you can do this. On the client side, what you will give? Will you give the Java file or will you give the class file? That's right. You will only give the class file. So to the client, you will not give Java file. You know why? If you give Java file, you are basically asking your client, hey client, we are giving you, it's something like going to a restaurant and the restaurant guy says, this is your kitchen, this is your raw material, cook yourself. Of course, you will not do that, right? When you go to a restaurant, you need a ready-made dish. So Java file here is basically that raw materials. You have to give them the cook files, which they can directly run. And they don't need a Java compiler on their machine. Cool. Yeah, and also if you give the raw materials, you have to also give them this recipe. Sometimes you want to give the recipe, sometimes you don't. And everyone just ignore this S. This is actually given by the editor, VS Code. Ignore that S there. Okay, cool. So these are the two steps you have to follow. But remember, we have not done those two steps, right? I was able to do this. How? Again, this was introduced later. So in the upcoming version of Java, they are allowing you to directly run the file, but not recommended. Let me repeat, not recommended. Because on the client side, you will not give Java file, you will give class files. So this is only for learning purpose. So from now, we are not going to use single command. We are always going to use two commands. First, javac and the file name, and then Java first code, the class name. Okay, now there's one of the interesting questions. So after talking about all these things, let me pick up some questions here. We got a question from Ashish. Ashish says, client has to interpret the code, right? That's right. Now you might be saying, if client wants to run this code, do client has to install Java? Yes. By default, every OS, in fact, most of the OS has JVM by default. The only thing you have to check is, do they have the latest version? Example, let's say, if you are using a feature which is there in Java 17, and the client has JVM 12 or 11, it will not work. Then they have to update their JVM. Make sense? But most of the OS has the latest version of JVM. Okay. Okay, you want to see the errors as well? Don't worry, I will show you the errors. Do we need to create a class file? No, every time you compile your code, it will create a class file for you. Which JavaC do you recommend is to install? Java compiler, I would say Java 17 should be good. Is it mandatory to save a file name same as class name? We'll talk about it sometime. Okay, what is meant by class? See, all this concept, what is class, what are methods, we'll talk about that later. We'll do step by step. At this point, if I talk about class, there are a lot of people who will get demotivated. See, if you already have Java 18, Java 17, or Java 19, I would say that's fine. But what if you get some issues later? Try to reinstall. At this point, I don't see any issue with Java 18 as well. But I always believe that you should always go for the stable versions. Yeah, Java 8, no, Java 8 is not okay, because we are going to use some features which is from Java 14, Java 12. In fact, this thing, which I was able to do directly running the file, will not be supported in Java 8 or Java 11. It came later. So at this point, let me repeat, go for Java 17. Okay, again, what is this string? All this thing, don't focus on those things. Focus only on what I'm doing with compilation and running. Don't focus on the syntax as of now. You will learn each and everything later. What is class, what is static, and all those stuff. Cool. Okay, now let me talk about one more important thing, which is, okay. Now, let me clear this. Now, let's say if I use a different class name, a lot of people have this confusion. Should we keep it the same? We have first code.java and then we have first code. Now, we don't have to keep this same. We can also change it. Let's try. I would say this is my second code. I will do one more thing. I will delete this class file. This one. Right click, delete, move to trash. Okay, increase the font size, done. Now, what do you think? Okay, how do we compile this file? Remember the steps? 2 steps, right? Step 1. First, compile your code. javac, and with the file name. File name is first code.java. Enter, no errors. Let's run the code now. When you run the code, what should I mention here? If I say first code, it will not work. It will say class not found exception, first code not found. Because when you run the code, you have to make sure that you run with the class name. which is second code. Enter, it worked. So there's no compulsion to have your class name and file name same. Okay. There's only one twist. The twist is, if you make your class public, again, what is public class, private class, we'll discuss that later. But when you make it public, then it becomes compulsory for you to have the same name as file name. You can see it says the public type code, second code must be defined its own file. It simply means in the first code, your class name should be first code if you make it public. But if you don't have it public, then you can have any name which you want. Cool. Okay, Darshan says, wow, I didn't know this. As I mentioned before, even if you know Java, there is always something which will be new. Yes, you will get the notes. Whatever I'm writing on my drawing board here, you will get that. You will also get the source code. Is it compulsory to have the public class in Java? We'll discuss that later. This is not a point where we can talk about it. Akash says this is the new one I've learned. Right. Okay, awesome. See, private will not work at this point. See, don't try new things now. I know you're excited to start with private as well, but control yourself. Okay. Awesome. So this is how basically you compile your code and you run your code. Of course, you can create multiple files. Now, let me just go back to second code and do that once again. I want to show you something. Let's compile this code. Now, after compiling, if I open my Explorer, can you see that we have two files? The first one is Java code, which is firstcode.java. The second one here is secondcode.class, because your class name, your .class file is created with the help of class name. I know I have talked about that. We will talk about classes later. But in one file, we can create multiple classes, not just one. Let's say I want to create something. There's a class called something. I'm just keeping it empty now, clear. And now I will delete this second class, secondcode.class, move to trash. Every time you compile this code, it will create a class file for you. So now tell me, if I run this, if I compile this code, how many class files it will create? 1 or 2? Okay, most of you are saying 2, few of you are saying 1. Let me just enter this. Can you see that we got 2 class files? So basically, it will create a class file for every class which you define. So in this code, you got 2 classes. It will create 2 class files. Is it making sense? Okay. Why like that is because every class will have its own class files so that you can use it, you can reuse it. As I mentioned before, to the client, you're not going to give Java code. You're going to give the class files. And the client is going to use all these class files. Example, let's say, if you're using Windows, we have different packaging techniques. Basically, in Windows, we use exes. In Mac, we use pkg, right? In Debian, we use .deb. So different systems have different file formats, right? So in Windows, we use exe. Now, what this exe is basically all the files in one particular folder, and they make it executable. That's your exe. In Java, what do you think in Java, what we do? When you want to submit your project to your client, what do you create? Yeah, Debian we use in Linux. This is the Linux extension. So in Java, we don't say exe. In Java, we create something called jar files. Any guess what jar stands for? It's Java archive. I hope my spelling is correct. Hey, what's the spelling for archive? So yeah, maybe. Doesn't matter. Yeah, this is Java archive, jar files. So we don't create exes, we create jar file. And when you open the jar, what you will get is lots of .class files. So when you open the jar, you will get all the class files. Making sense? So in your project, let's say you have 100 .java files, and in those Java files, in total, let's say 600 class files, which is not an ideal situation, but let's say in 100 Java files, you got 600 class files or 600 classes. How many okay, I should say class files, classes. How many class files it will create? Yeah, so in total, it will create 600 class files. And you can bundle that into one jar file, .jar. So imagine jar as a package, the box. There was one of the questions, can we create a exe file? In Java, we can. There are some tools using which you can create exes, but not recommended. Basically, this jar file, some of the jar files are executable jar files. We can execute jar files. Cool. Yeah, remember, I don't know how old you are. If you can, okay, so just list your age in the chat. I just want to know who is the oldest here. We got 23, 24, 21, 25, 28, 58. Okay, Nikhil. 44, 25. Most of you are in your 20s, 34, 25, 42, 35, 31, 40. Oh, that's awesome. No one below 20. Okay, we got 18. That's right. Awesome. Now, if you are that old, maybe around 30, you might be doing, when we used to use Nokia phone. In Nokia phone, if you want to install the applications, example, in Android, we use APK files. In Nokia phones, I guess it was Symbian or after that, we used to use .jar files. If you want to install games or something, we used to use jar. Yeah, Symbian OS, right? Yeah. Oh, good old days. Nostalgic. Okay. Now, people who are not that old, you might not be knowing, but remember APK files in Android? So we used to use jar. I'm not that old, but still, I was there in that era of using jar games. Okay, anyway, so come back here. So this is how you create a jar file. This is how you have your jar file, which will have multiple classes. So remember this thing, irrespective of how many Java files you have, the total class files you will get is depend upon the number of classes you have. Cool, everyone? Okay, let me stop this screen share for some time to take up some questions. As I mentioned, after every topic, we can take up some questions here. Okay, question from Anam. I have already installed Java 19 on my system. Should I uninstall it and install Java 17? I would suggest, if you can do that, please do that. Otherwise, I have not tested Java 19 completely. I prefer, especially for learners who are doing Java for the first time, go for the Java 17 version. What will be location of code java.txt? Okay, you're talking about JShell. I think it should be the home directory. from where I've opened JShell. Let me just verify once. Go to my home folder. Yeah, it's your home folder. I've just verified that. Okay, when I'm opening the file, it's returning 6, but when I'm listing all the commands, it only shows 4 commands. Yeah, even I need to check with that because I've never tried list or I've never tried open it. This was the first time I'm doing that because we don't use JShell so often for the projects. JShell is basically a REPL. You know what REPL is? Example, when you learn Python, basically you write the code in one line, you get the output. That is REPL, which stands for read, evaluate, print, loop. IDE versus shell difference, JShell difference. IDE is a place where you do everything. Complex projects, multiple files, debug, run, compile, test, everything. JShell is a place where you can just test your snippets, code snippet. So don't focus on JShell from now. It is only for learning purpose. I just wanted to show you that you can test your small code in JShell. What about 18? 18 is not a LTS version. Remember last time we have talked about different versions. Yeah, basically I'm reading the questions from the Zoom chat here, everyone. Okay, any more questions? Extension for Java and VS Code. Yeah, you can. The moment you create a Java file, it will ask you for the extension. Just install that. Anyway, from tomorrow we are not going to use VS Code. We are going to use Eclipse. In fact, maybe after my session. So in next 15-20 minutes, I will finish my session. Then Heather will continue. Heather will start with Eclipse, if I'm not wrong. Okay. I have Java 7. Can I install Java 17 without uninstalling Java 7? Yes, you can do that. But maybe you have to set the environment variables in Windows. And I guess the videos have been shared for the installation steps. I have Java 11. See, Java 11 is also okay, but there are few concepts which are only there in Java 14, 15. Then that will not work. For Mac, it's not there. Okay, I will get a video for Mac. Java 8, Java 19 as of now, it is working. See, I don't have to repeat once again. If you want to learn properly, if you don't want to take a risk when you're learning something, go for Java 17. Otherwise, you can use any version. Okay. Yeah, Java 18 works too. Yeah. Cool. Okay, whenever we share the Java file to the client, in which file we should share. So basically, you don't share the Java file, you share the class files. And you do that by packaging it into a .jar file. But if you want to make it open source, if you want to put that on a repository like Git, you save the Java code itself. You share your Java code there. Yeah, we will take a break in next 5 minutes. I just want to make sure that we answer most of the questions. Can we zip it? But then if you zip it, it will not be executable. Jar files are executable. You can directly click it and open. When you make a web application as well, you want to deploy your application on some server, then also jar is preferred. Okay, that S in VS Code before the hello world is given by VS Code. Ignore that. It basically means a string, but at this point, let's not focus on that. Yeah, we also have var in Java, which is called Web Archive. But then we are moving away from web applications to microservices. So they prefer to use jar files also. Yeah, for the enterprise level, we should be using IDEs. JVM will be explained. As I mentioned before, this is a 6 months live course. Every day, 3 hours, 6 months. Can you imagine how much we're going to cover? Okay. See, session is not over, everyone. We're just taking up some questions. We will take a break. Then Heather will continue with the further topic. Okay. 1 more minute and then we are taking a break. In MS, what MS? Microsoft. See, we can also use microservices. We use jar there, jar files. We get jar files. Okay, people are waiting for Heather, sir. There's a huge demand for Heather. Awesome. Hey everyone, public keyword will be discussed later. There's a special session, especially with public, private, protected, and all the stuff. Okay, cool. So with this, let's take a break. So we have a break for 10 minutes. This is 8:55 p.m. IST. Let's take a break of 10 minutes. You can decide on your machine as well. I'm just typing a break now in the text. You can look at that and come back in 10 minutes.